Three black SUVs rolled to a stop outside a failing diner in Denton Falls, and the entire street went silent. Men in expensive suits stepped out, their polished shoes clicking against the cracked pavement. The shopkeepers who had spent months complaining about the homeless woman now stood frozen. Because that woman, the one they'd spat at, ignored, called trash, was stepping out of the lead vehicle in a tailored coat worth more than their yearly earnings. Ethan Marlowe, the stubborn billionaire who'd protected her, felt his daughter's hand tighten in his. He'd given 1 cup of coffee. He had no idea what he'd started. Before we dive in, if you're loving this story, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this tale travels. Now, let's begin. The coffee was always black, always hot, and always exactly at 6:40 in the morning. Ethan Marlowe pushed through the front door of what used to be Morton's Hardware, now gutted down to concrete and exposed beams, carrying 2 paper cups. The November air bit at his face, turning his breath into small clouds that disappeared as quickly as his footsteps echoed down the empty street. Denton Falls didn't wake up early anymore. Not like it used to. Nora Vale sat in her usual spot, a recessed doorway 3 buildings down from his construction site. She had a sleeping bag that looked like it had survived a war, a backpack held together with duct tape, and a face that had learned not to expect anything good from strangers. "Morning," Ethan said, holding out one of the cups. She looked up at him with those pale green eyes that seemed too alert for someone living on the street. For a moment, she didn't move. Then her fingers, chapped, the nails broken, reached out and took the cup. "Black," he said, though she already knew that. He'd been doing this for 3 weeks now. "Thanks." Her voice was rough, like she hadn't used it much. Or maybe she'd used it too much, screaming at people who didn't listen. Ethan didn't ask her questions. He didn't offer to call a shelter or suggest she get help. He just handed her the coffee, same time every morning, and went back to work. Inside the construction site, his daughter Maya sat on an upturned bucket, watching through the gap in the plywood boarding. She was 7 years old and had her mother's dark hair, though that's where the similarity ended. Her mother had left when Maya was 2. Decided that being married to a billionaire who insisted on living like he wasn't one wasn't the life she'd signed up for. "Why do you give her coffee, Dad?" Ethan set his own cup down on a sawhorse and grabbed his work gloves. The diner renovation was behind schedule. The contractor he'd hired had quit after 2 weeks, saying the building was a money pit. Ethan had decided to finish it himself, which meant most mornings started at 5 a.m. and ended when Maya reminded him she needed dinner. "Because she's there," he said. "Joey's mom says she's dangerous." "Joey's mom say anything else?" Maya shrugged. "That you're weird for talking to homeless people. That you should sell this place and stop pretending you're normal." Ethan pulled on his gloves and looked at his daughter. She had paint on her jeans from helping him last week, and her sneakers had a hole forming near the toe. He could buy her 100 pairs of shoes. He could buy her a house on every continent. But he'd learned the hard way that money didn't make people less lonely, and it sure as hell didn't teach them how to be decent. "You think I'm pretending?" "I think you're stubborn," Maya said, "like Grandpa." Ethan's father had owned a chain of diners across the Midwest before selling them for enough money to retire 5 times over. He'd taught Ethan that work mattered more than wealth, that a man who couldn't make something with his own hands was just a guy with a bank account. Then he died of a heart attack at 63, still working the grill at the last diner he refused to sell. "Your grandpa would have liked Nora," Ethan said. "You don't even know her." "Don't need to." He grabbed a crowbar and went to work on the old counter. The wood was rotted through in places, scarred by decades of hot plates and spilled coffee. This building had been Morton's Hardware for 40 years before the old man died, and his kids sold it off. Then it sat empty for another 10, slowly falling apart while the neighborhood around it did the same. Ethan had bought it for cash 6 months ago. People thought he was insane. Maybe they were right. The truth was, he didn't know what the hell he was doing. He'd made his fortune in tech, sold a company at 28, invested smart, and woke up one day to realize he had more money than he could spend in 3 lifetimes. And absolutely nothing that mattered. So he'd moved to Denton Falls, bought a normal house, on a normal street, and enrolled Maya in public school. He wanted her to grow up around real people with real problems, not the kind of bubble-wrapped existence he'd had after the money came. The diner was supposed to be simple. Buy a building, fix it up, hire some locals, serve decent food at fair prices. A place where people could sit down and feel like they belonged. Instead, it had turned into a nightmare of permits, zoning disputes, and neighbors who thought a diner would bring in the wrong element, which apparently meant anyone who didn't drive a late model SUV and have a lawn service. The door creaked open behind him. "Mr. Marlowe?" Ethan turned. A man in his 50s stood in the doorway, wearing a jacket with Denton Falls Business Association embroidered on the chest. Dale Kramer. He owned the sporting goods store 2 blocks over and apparently considered himself the neighborhood's unofficial mayor. "It's Ethan." "Right, Ethan." Dale stepped inside, looking around at the construction mess with barely concealed disgust. "Got a minute?" "Not really." "This won't take long." Dale pulled out his phone, scrolled for a second, then turned the screen to face Ethan. It showed a photo of Nora sitting in her doorway, wrapped in her sleeping bag. "We need to talk about your friend." Ethan set down the crowbar. "She's not bothering anyone. She's bothering my customers. I've had 3 people this week say they don't feel safe walking past her." "Then they can walk on the other side of the street." Dale's jaw tightened. "You're not taking this seriously." "You're right, I'm not. Look, I get it. You're new here. You want to make a difference. Very noble. But this neighborhood has standards. We've worked hard to clean things up, attract the right kind of businesses, make it somewhere families want to be. And homeless people don't fit that vision." "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to." Dale put his phone away and crossed his arms. "The Business Association is filing a complaint with the city. Loitering, public nuisance, health code violations. If she doesn't move on voluntarily, we'll get the police involved." "She's not breaking any laws." "Maybe not, but you are." Dale gestured at the construction site around them. "I pulled your permits. You're 3 inspections behind, you don't have a licensed contractor on record, and the fire marshal says your electrical work is substandard. Keep defending the vagrant, and I'll make sure the city shuts this whole project down." Ethan felt something cold settle in his chest. Not fear, anger. "Get out of my building." "Excuse me?" "You heard me. Get the fuck out." Dale's face went red. "You're making a mistake." "Wouldn't be my first." After Dale left, Maya walked over and stood next to her father. She didn't say anything for a while, just looked at the half-demolished counter. "Are we in trouble?" she finally asked. "Maybe." "Because of the coffee lady?" Ethan put his hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Because some people think being poor is a crime." "That's stupid." "Yeah, it is. Much." The next morning at 6:40, Ethan walked out with 2 cups of coffee and found a security guard standing in front of Nora's doorway. The guy was young, maybe 25, wearing a uniform from one of those rent-a-cop companies that patrol shopping centers. He had his arms crossed and was blocking Nora from view. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to keep moving." Ethan stopped. "Who hired you?" "That's not your concern." "The hell it's not. This is a public sidewalk. I have authorization from the property owner to remove trespassers." Ethan looked past him. Nora was sitting with her back against the door, her sleeping bag pulled up to her chin. She wasn't looking at either of them. She was looking at the ground, like she'd learned a long time ago that eye contact just made things worse. "She's not trespassing," Ethan said. "She's been warned multiple times. If she doesn't leave voluntarily, I'm authorized to use reasonable force." Something in Ethan's chest went tight. He set the coffee cups down on the ground and took a step forward. "Touch her, and I'll break your arm." The guard's hand moved to his belt, where a canister of pepper spray hung in a leather holster. "Sir, I'm going to need you to back up." "Make me." They stood there for 5 seconds that felt like an hour. The street was starting to wake up, cars passing, someone opening a shop across the way. People were watching now. Ethan could feel their eyes, could sense the judgment forming. Here was the crazy billionaire making a scene over some homeless woman. Let them watch. "There a problem here?" A Denton Falls police cruiser had pulled up to the curb. Officer Ramirez got out, a guy Ethan recognized from the school drop-off line. He had a daughter in Maya's grade. "This man is interfering with private security," the guard said. Ramirez looked at Ethan, then at Nora, then back at the guard. "You got paperwork showing you're authorized to be here?" "It's with my supervisor, so that's a no." Ramirez walked over to where Nora was sitting. "Ma'am, you okay?" She nodded without looking up. "Anyone threaten you?" She shook her head. Ramirez turned back to the guard. City ordinance says she can sit here long as she's not blocking foot traffic or creating a hazard. You want her gone, you need a court order. Till then, you're the one who needs to move along. The guard started to argue, then thought better of it. He shot Ethan a look that promised this wasn't over, then walked back toward the sporting goods store. After he left, Ramirez came over to Ethan. You trying to make enemies? Not trying, just seems to be happening. Dale Kramer's got connections. City council, mayor's office. You keep pissing him off, you're going to find your life gets real complicated real fast. Seems like it's already complicated. Ramirez nodded toward Nora. You know anything about her? No. Don't want to? Not my business. But giving her coffee every morning is. Ethan picked up the cups he'd set down. One had spilled a little, soaking into the concrete. You got a problem with that? No, I got a problem with you getting yourself hurt over something that's not going to end well. Ramirez lowered his voice. Between you and me? I agree with what you're doing, but the people who run this town, they don't, and they're going to make you pay for it. Let them try. After Ramirez left, Ethan walked over and held out the coffee that hadn't spilled. Nora took it with both hands. Her fingers were shaking a little. You didn't have to do that, she said. Yeah, I did. Why? It was the first real question she'd ever asked him. In 3 weeks of morning coffee, she'd never asked why he did it, never asked who he was or what he wanted. She'd just taken the cup and thanked him and let him walk away. Ethan didn't have a good answer, or maybe he had too many answers, none of them simple enough to explain. Because nobody else will, he finally said. She looked up at him then, really looked at him, and for a second he saw something in her eyes that wasn't defeat or fear or the blank acceptance of someone who'd given up. It was something sharper, calculating. Then it was gone, and she was just a tired woman with a cup of cooling coffee. Thank you, she said. Ethan went back inside to find Maya watching from the window again. Is she going to be okay? His daughter asked. I don't know. Are you? That stopped him. Maya had her mother's way of asking questions that cut straight through the bullshit. Yeah, kiddo, I'm going to be fine. Joey's mom says you're going to lose all your money trying to save people who don't want to be saved. Joey's mom talks a lot. She says it's sad. That you're sad because mom left, and now you're trying to fix broken things because you couldn't fix your marriage. Ethan crouched down so he was eye level with his daughter. You think that's what I'm doing? Maya shrugged. I think you're nice. And I think nice people get hurt a lot. Maybe. But mean people hurt people on purpose. I'd rather be hurt than be the one doing the hurting. Even if it means we lose the diner? Even then. She thought about that for a while, then nodded. Okay. But if we lose it, can we at least get pizza for dinner? The good kind, not the frozen stuff. Ethan laughed, pulled her into a hug, and tried not to think about how much truth there was in what Joey's mom had said. The threats started 2 days later. First, the building inspector showed up unannounced and found a dozen violations that definitely hadn't been there before. Then the fire marshal condemned the electrical panel, which meant no power until Ethan hired a licensed electrician to rewire the entire building. Then the health department flagged the plumbing as a biohazard risk. Each citation came with a fine. Each fine came with a deadline. And each deadline was designed to make it impossible to fix everything in time. Ethan knew what was happening. This was how the system worked when you didn't play along. You could have all the money in the world, but if the people running the city wanted you gone, they'd bury you in paperwork until you gave up. He hired lawyers. He filed appeals. He paid the fines and fixed the violations and showed up to every hearing with documentation proving he'd done everything by the book. It didn't matter. The permits got lost. The inspections got delayed. The approval process that should have taken days stretched into weeks. And every morning at 6:40, Ethan walked out with 2 cups of coffee and found Nora sitting in that doorway, watching the neighborhood wake up with those pale green eyes that never missed anything. You should stop, she said one morning. Stop what? This. Whatever you're trying to prove. I'm not trying to prove anything. Then you're stupider than you look. It was the most she'd said to him in a month. Ethan sat down on the curb across from her, something he'd never done before. The coffee was still hot enough to burn his tongue. Why do you care? He asked. I don't. Bullshit. She almost smiled at that. Almost. You're gonna lose. Maybe. Definitely. Dale Kramer's got the mayor in his pocket. The business association owns half the city council. You're one guy with a checkbook and a stubborn streak. That's not enough. You know a lot about local politics for someone living on the street. You learn to pay attention when you don't have anywhere to hide. Ethan took a sip of his coffee. Across the street, Dale's sporting goods store was opening for the day. He could see Dale through the window, talking on the phone, probably to another city official he was calling in a favor from. "What's your story?" Ethan asked. Nora's expression went flat. "None of your business." "Fair enough." They sat in silence for a while. A few cars passed. A woman walking her dog crossed to the other side of the street when she saw Nora. Like poverty was contagious. "I had a daughter," Nora said suddenly. Ethan looked at her, but she was staring straight ahead. "She'd be about your girl's age now, 8, maybe 9. "What happened?" "What do you think happened? I made bad choices, trusted the wrong people, ended up somewhere I couldn't get out of. System took her, said I was unfit. Maybe they were right. You ever try to get her back?" "Every day for 3 years. Then I stopped. Figured she was better off without me." "You believe that?" "Doesn't matter what I believe. It's done." Ethan wanted to say something helpful, something that would make it better. But he'd learned that lesson already. Some pain didn't have a solution. Some broken things stayed broken. "I'm sorry," he said. "Yeah, me too." She stood up, started gathering her things, the sleeping bag, the backpack, the few possessions that made up her entire life. "Where are you going?" "Somewhere else. You don't need this shit following you around." "Wait." But she was already walking away, the sleeping bag rolled up under her arm, moving with the practiced efficiency of someone who'd done this too many times. Ethan watched her turn the corner and disappear. He sat there on the curb with 2 cups of coffee, one of them going cold in his hand, and felt like he'd just failed some test he hadn't known he was taking. "What?" Maya asked about Nora that night. "She's gone," Ethan said. "Why?" "Because she didn't want to cause me any more trouble." "That's dumb. It's not her fault people are mean." "No, it's not." They were eating dinner at the small table in their kitchen, spaghetti from a box, garlic bread from the freezer. The house was a 2-bedroom ranch on a street lined with similar houses, all of them built in the 70s and starting to show their age. Ethan could have bought something bigger, newer, in one of the gated communities on the edge of town. But Maya had liked this house because it had a tree in the backyard she could climb. "Are you going to look for her?" Maya asked. "I don't know where to look." "You could ask the police. They just tell me she's not missing. Adults are allowed to go wherever they want." "Even if it's dangerous?" Even then, Maya twirled spaghetti around her fork, thinking, Joey's mom says homeless people choose to be homeless, that if they really wanted to stop, they could. Joey's mom doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. Dad, language. "Sorry, but it's true. People don't choose to lose everything. They choose to survive the best way they can with what they've got left." "Is that what Nora's doing? Surviving?" "Yeah." "Then we should help her." "I tried. She left." "So try harder." Ethan looked at his daughter, this 7-year-old kid with spaghetti sauce on her chin and a sense of right and wrong that somehow hadn't been beaten out of her yet by the world. "You're smarter than me, you know that?" "I know. Mom said it runs in her side of the family." Despite everything, Ethan laughed. 2 weeks went by. The diner project hit a wall. Without permits, Ethan couldn't continue the renovation. Without the renovation, he couldn't open. And without opening, every day was just money disappearing into a building that might never serve a single customer. His lawyers said to wait it out. Eventually, the city would have to approve the permits or risk a lawsuit they couldn't win. But eventually might mean months, years. Ethan kept showing up anyway. He'd sit in the gutted building with a cup of coffee and look at the plans he'd drawn up. The counter layout, the kitchen design, the booth configuration. He'd imagine families eating here, workers grabbing lunch, people building the kind of casual community that used to exist before everyone retreated into their phones and their private lives. Now it was just a shell full of broken dreams and mounting debt. One morning, he found an envelope slipped under the door. No address, no stamp, just his name written in neat handwriting on the front. Inside was a single piece of paper with 2 words, Thank you. And underneath, in smaller letters, for seeing me. Ethan read it 3 times, then 4. The handwriting was careful, deliberate, not the scrawl of someone who'd given up. The handwriting of someone who still believed words mattered. He folded the note and put it in his pocket. That night, lying in bed, he kept thinking about what Nora had said, about having a daughter she'd lost, about making bad choices and trusting the wrong people, about a system that decided she was unfit and took away the one thing that mattered. He thought about Maya, asleep in the next room, her nightlight casting shadows on the wall. What would he do if someone tried to take her away? What laws would he break? What lines would he cross? All of them, every single one. Maybe that's what Nora had done too. Maybe her bad choices were just a parent's desperate choices made in impossible circumstances. Or maybe he was projecting. Maybe he wanted her to be salvageable because it proved something about the world. That broken people could be fixed, that kindness mattered, that the system hadn't won. He didn't know. What he did know was that he hadn't felt this angry in a long time, not sad, not defeated. Angry, the kind of anger that came from watching people with power use it to hurt people without any. The kind of anger that made you want to burn things down instead of building them up. He got out of bed and went to his home office. The computer was already on. He opened his email and started typing. To Denton Falls City Council. From Ethan Marlowe. Subject, Public Records Request. He requested every email, memo, and document related to the permits for his building. Every communication between the building inspector, the fire marshal, the health department, and the business association. Every citation, every violation, every delay. If they wanted to bury him in paperwork, he'd return the favor. Then he opened a second email. To Marcus Webb, attorney. Subject, need your help. Marcus was a guy Ethan had gone to college with, back before the money. He'd become a civil rights lawyer, the kind who took on cases nobody else would touch. Police misconduct, housing discrimination, government corruption. They hadn't talked in 5 years. Ethan explained the situation, the diner, the permits, the woman on the street, the security guard, the threats. He laid it all out in detail, then added one more line. I want to fight this. Whatever it takes. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. Then he poured a drink, whiskey, neat, and sat on his back porch watching the tree in his yard sway in the wind. Maya had named it Gerald for reasons she'd never explained. It was a good tree, strong, old enough to have survived a lot of seasons. Ethan hoped he could do the same. The next morning at 6:40, he walked out with 1 cup of coffee. The doorway where Nora used to sit was empty. Someone had power washed the concrete, removing the stains and the chalk marks and any evidence that a person had lived there. Ethan stood there for a long time, holding the coffee that was meant for someone who was gone. Then he heard footsteps behind him. Mr. Marlowe. He turned. Dale Kramer was standing there with 2 other men from the business association. All of them had the satisfied expressions of people who'd won something they thought they deserved. She's gone, Dale said. Took care of itself. Now we can all move forward like civilized people. Ethan set the coffee cup down on the ground, right in the middle of the doorway where Nora used to sit. Fuck you, Dale. Dale's smile faltered. Excuse me? You heard me. Fuck you, and fuck everyone who thinks making a woman disappear is something to be proud of. We didn't make her do anything. You made her feel so unwelcome, so worthless, that leaving seemed like the better option. You did that, all of you. Ethan looked at the other men. You're going to stand there and tell me you're proud of that? One of them shifted uncomfortably. The other looked away. Dale's face was turning red again. You need to watch how you talk to people. Or what? You'll shut down my diner? Already doing that. You'll turn the city against me? Already done. What else you got, Dale? What other petty bullshit you going to throw at someone who just wanted to run a restaurant and treat people decent? You're making a scene. Good. Let everyone see. A small crowd had gathered. People on their way to work. Shopkeepers opening up. A few regulars from the coffee shop down the street. Ethan recognized some of them. Neighbors who'd smiled and waved when he first moved to town, back when they didn't know he was going to be a problem. You all okay with this? Ethan asked them. You okay with running off someone because they didn't fit your idea of what belongs in this neighborhood? Nobody answered. That woman never hurt anyone, never asked for anything, just sat in a doorway and tried to survive. And you, he pointed at Dale, you decided that was too much, that her existence was offensive, that making her disappear was worth celebrating. She was bad for business. She was a person. Ethan's voice cracked. He didn't care. She had a name. She had a life. She had a daughter she lost, and pain you can't imagine. And you treated her like trash because it was easier than seeing her as human. The crowd was silent now. Ethan could feel their discomfort, their desire to be anywhere else. Good. Let them squirm. I'm done being polite about this, he said. I'm done pretending that the way this town treats people is okay. You want to shut down my diner? Do it. You want to run me out of town? Try. But I'm not apologizing for treating another person with basic fucking decency. He picked up the coffee cup and walked back to his building, leaving Dale and the others standing there with nothing to say. Inside, Maya was waiting. You said the F word, she said. I know. I'll put $1 in the swear jar. You said it twice. That's $2. Fair enough. She walked over and hugged him, her small arms barely reaching around his waist. I'm proud of you, Dad. Ethan closed his eyes and held his daughter and tried not to think about the other daughter, the one Nora had lost, and whether anyone had ever hugged her like this and told her she was loved. The fight wasn't over. It was just beginning. The lawsuit hit 3 days after Ethan's outburst on the street. Dale Kramer and the Business Association filed a civil complaint alleging harassment, defamation, and interference with business operations. They were seeking damages, a restraining order, and immediate cessation of all construction on the diner property. Marcus Webb called that evening. They're not playing around, he said. His voice had that lawyer flatness that meant bad news delivered professionally. This is designed to drain your resources. Even if we win, you're looking at months of legal fees and depositions. Ethan sat at his kitchen table with the complaint spread out in front of him. 23 pages of legal language that boiled down to one thing: shut up and go away. What are our chances? In court? Probably good. You didn't actually defame anyone. Truth is an absolute defense, but that's not the point. The point is to make this expensive and public enough that you give up. I'm not giving up. I know. That's why I already filed our response. But Ethan, you need to understand what you're walking into. These people have money, connections, and a lot to lose if you make them look bad. They're going to come at you with everything. Let them. Maya was doing homework at the other end of the table, pretending not to listen. She'd gotten good at that, acting like the adult conversations didn't bother her while her pencil pressed harder into the paper with each word she heard. After Marcus hung up, Ethan closed the lawsuit and pushed it aside. How's the math homework? Fine, Maya said without looking up. Need help? No. Maya. She set down her pencil. Are we going to lose our house? What? No. Where'd you hear that? Joey said his mom said that lawsuits cost a lot of money, and sometimes people lose their houses. Ethan pulled his chair around next to hers. Joey's mom needs a hobby that doesn't involve talking about other people's business. So we're not going to lose the house? No, I promise. What about the diner? That was harder to answer. The truth was he didn't know. The permits were still stuck, the legal fees were mounting, and every day the building sat empty was money down a hole. He had enough saved to weather this for a while, but eventually even a billionaire runs out of patience when the money's only flowing one direction. I don't know, he said finally. Maybe. Because of Nora? No, because some people think they own this town and anyone who disagrees is a threat. Maya picked up her pencil again, tapping it against her notebook. Do you think she's okay? I hope so. But you don't know. No, I don't. That's sad. Yeah, it is. She went back to her homework, and Ethan went back to staring at the lawsuit, and neither of them said what they were both thinking, that kindness was supposed to matter, and it was fucked up that the world punished you for it. The next morning, Ethan skipped the coffee routine. There was no point. Nora was gone, the doorway was empty, and standing there with a cup meant for someone who'd disappeared felt like mourning something he'd never actually had. Instead, he went straight to the diner and got to work. The electrical panel had been condemned, so he hired an electrician, a guy named Pete, who'd worked on his dad's diners back in the day and didn't give a shit about local politics. Pete took one look at the panel and whistled. Yeah, this is garbage, but it wasn't garbage 2 weeks ago. What do you mean? Pete pointed to a junction box. See this connection? Someone loosened it. And this breaker? It's been tripped manually, not from overload. This whole panel was sabotaged. Ethan felt something cold slide down his spine. You sure? 20 years doing this, I'm sure. Someone wanted this to fail inspection. Can you fix it? I can rewire the whole thing, but it'll take time and it won't matter if they keep finding reasons to fail you. Do it anyway. Pete shrugged. Your money. While Pete worked, Ethan went through the other citations. The plumbing issues, the structural concerns, the fire code violations. One by one, he checked them against the inspections from when he'd bought the building. None of it matched. Someone had been inside. Someone had created problems where none existed, then called in the city inspectors to document the failures. He pulled out his phone and called Marcus. We need to add evidence tampering to our countersuit, Ethan said. They didn't just block my permits, they sabotaged the building. Can you prove it? I'm working on it. Work faster. Our preliminary hearing is in 2 weeks. After Marcus hung up, Ethan stood in the middle of the gutted diner and tried to figure out his next move. He could install cameras, hire security, turn this place into a fortress. But that felt like admitting defeat, like accepting that the world was full of people who'd rather destroy things than let someone build something good. The door opened behind him. Mr. Marlowe? Officer Ramirez stepped inside, looking uncomfortable. He had his uniform on, but his posture was all civilian. Hands in pockets, shoulders relaxed. It's Ethan. Right, listen, I'm not here officially. Just wanted to give you a heads up. About what? Dale's been talking to the chief. Wants extra patrols around here, says you're a safety risk. Chief's not buying it, but there's pressure from the mayor's office. So what does that mean? It means watch yourself. Don't give them a reason to arrest you. No more confrontations, no more public scenes. They're looking for an excuse. Ethan laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. I tell a guy to fuck off and suddenly I'm a safety risk? In this town? Yeah. You're not from here, you don't play by the rules, and you made them look bad in front of people. That's unforgivable. What about Nora? Anyone looking for her? Ramirez shifted his weight. Why would they? Because she's missing. She's not missing. She left. You know that for sure? I know nobody's reported her missing. I know she's an adult who can go wherever she wants. And I know that even if I wanted to look for her, I'd have about 100 actual cases that take priority. So that's it? She's just gone and nobody cares? I didn't say I don't care. I said I can't do anything about it. Ramirez pulled his hands out of his pockets. Look, between you and me, I think what you did was right. Giving her coffee, standing up to that rent-a-cop, calling out the business association, all of it. But right doesn't win fights in Denton Falls. Money does. Connections do. And you're running out of both. I've got plenty of money. Not the kind that matters. The kind that comes with leverage, with history, with knowing whose pocket to line and whose ass to kiss. You're just a guy with a bank account. That's not enough. After Ramirez left, Ethan sat on the floor of the diner with his back against the wall and closed his eyes. He'd been naive. He'd thought that buying a building and working hard and treating people decently would be enough, that the world rewarded merit and effort and basic human kindness. But the world didn't work that way. It rewarded the people who already had power and punished anyone who threatened it. And Ethan had made the mistake of thinking his money could insulate him from that reality. His phone buzzed, a text from Maya's school. Please call regarding Maya, non-emergency. He dialed the principal's office. Mr. Marlowe, thanks for calling back. Principal Chen had that overly calm voice people used when they were about to tell you something you didn't want to hear. Maya got into an altercation today during recess. Is she hurt? No, but she did push another student, a girl named Joey. Of course, Joey, whose mother couldn't keep her mouth shut. What happened? According to witnesses, Joey was saying some unkind things about you and the homeless woman. Maya told her to stop. Joey didn't. Maya pushed her. Did Joey get in trouble? A pause. We're addressing the situation with both students. That's not what I asked. Another pause, longer this time. Joey's mother is on the PTA board. We're trying to handle this in a way that's fair to everyone. So that's a no. Mr. Marlowe, is my daughter suspended? She's been given a warning. One more incident and we'll have to implement disciplinary action. And Joey? What's she getting? I really can't discuss another student's. Right. Of course not. Ethan stood up and started pacing. Let me guess. Joey's mom wants me to apologize. Maybe have Maya apologize. Make this all go away so nobody has to admit that her kid was being a bully. I think everyone would benefit from a conversation about appropriate behavior. Yeah, I'll bet. He hung up before he said something that would make things worse. When he picked Maya up that afternoon, she was waiting outside the principal's office, with her backpack on her lap and her face set in that expression kids get when they know they're in trouble, but don't think they deserve to be. They got in the car without talking. Want to tell me what happened? Ethan asked. Joey's a jerk. What'd she say? That you're crazy, that the homeless lady probably robbed someone and you're stupid for being nice to her, that everyone thinks we're weird. And you pushed her. She wouldn't shut up. Ethan pulled into traffic and headed toward home. Part of him wanted to tell Maya she'd done the right thing, that standing up to bullies was important, that sometimes people needed to get pushed, but he was supposed to be the adult, the responsible parent, the one teaching his kid that violence wasn't the answer. You can't push people, he said. Why not? You told Dale to fuck off. Language. You said it first. I'm an adult, and I was wrong to lose my temper like that. Maya crossed her arms. So we're just supposed to let people be mean? No, we're supposed to be better than them. That's stupid. Maybe, but it's how the world works. The world sucks. Ethan couldn't argue with that. At home, Maya went straight to her room and slammed the door. Ethan made dinner, grilled cheese and tomato soup, the kind of meal you make when you're too tired to try, and ate it standing up at the counter. His phone rang. Marcus again. We got the public records back, the lawyer said. You were right. There's email correspondence between Dale and the building inspector. Nothing explicit, but enough to show coordination. They were looking for reasons to fail you before the inspections even happened. That's evidence. It's suggestive, but it's not proof of sabotage. We'd need to show that someone physically entered your property and damaged things. I'm installing cameras tonight. Good. But Ethan, even with evidence, this is a long fight. You need to be prepared for that. I am. Are you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're fighting a war on 3 fronts. The lawsuit, the permits, and now your daughter's getting blowback at school. At some point, you have to ask yourself if it's worth it. It's worth it. Even if you lose everything? I'm not going to lose everything. You sound like every client I've ever had right before they lost everything. After Marcus hung up, Ethan went to check on Maya. She was lying on her bed, staring at the ceiling. Hey, I'm still mad at you, she said. That's okay. I'm a little mad at me, too. Are we going to have to move? Why would we have to move? Because everyone hates us. Ethan sat down on the edge of her bed. Not everyone, just some people. And their opinions don't matter. They matter at school. You got any friends who don't care what Joey's mom thinks? Maya thought about it. Sarah doesn't. And Marcus from my science class. He said his dad thinks you're cool for standing up to Mr. Kramer. See? Not everyone. But most people. Yeah, most people. He looked at his daughter, this kid who was learning way too young that the world wasn't fair and that doing the right thing often meant standing alone. I'm sorry you're going through this. It's not your fault. Kind of is. I'm the one who decided to make a stand. Would you do it different? I don't know. Maybe I should have been smarter about it, found a way to help Nora without making enemies. Is there a way to do that? Probably not. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the sun was setting, turning the sky orange and purple. Gerald the tree swayed in the wind, its branches creaking. Dad? Yeah? Do you think she's dead? The question hit him like a punch. What? No. Why would you think that? Because people don't just disappear. Something happens to them. She left on her own, Maya. She wrote me a note. But you don't know where she went. You don't know if she's safe. No, I don't. Doesn't that scare you? It did. More than he wanted to admit, because Maya was right. People didn't just vanish. They went somewhere, and that somewhere was either better or worse than where they'd been. And for someone like Nora, someone who'd already lost everything once, the odds of better weren't great. Yeah, he said, it scares me. Then why aren't you looking for her? Because I don't know how. You have money. You could hire someone. It was such a simple, logical solution that Ethan felt stupid for not thinking of it himself. He'd been so focused on fighting Dale and saving the diner that he'd forgotten the person who'd started this whole mess. Not a mess. A fight. A choice. "You're right," he said. "I'll call someone tomorrow." "Promise?" "Promise." Maya rolled over and hugged him, her face pressed against his shoulder. "I hope she's okay." "Me too, kiddo." That night, after Maya was asleep, Ethan searched online for private investigators in Denton Falls. There were 3 listings. 2 had websites that looked like they'd been built in 1997. The third had a phone number and nothing else. He called that one. "Yeah," a woman's voice, rough from cigarettes or whiskey or both. "I'm looking for someone." "Missing person?" "Sort of. She left on her own, but I need to know she's safe." "Police won't help you?" "Police don't care." A long pause, then the sound of a lighter clicking. "Name's Rita. Give me the details." Ethan told her about Nora. The doorway, the coffee, the note. The last time he'd seen her. He didn't mention the diner or the lawsuit or Dale Kramer. Just the facts. "You got a picture?" "No." "Name? Date of birth? Social security number?" "Just her first name. Nora." Rita laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You want me to find a homeless woman named Nora with no picture, no ID, and no last known address? Can you do it?" "For the right price, I can try. But I'm going to tell you right now, odds are she doesn't want to be found. People who leave notes and disappear usually have good reasons." "I know, I just need to know she's okay. And if she's not, then I need to know that too." Rita quoted him a price that was probably double what the job was worth. Ethan didn't care. "I'll send you a retainer in the morning. Start wherever you think makes sense." "You're not going to ask about my credentials?" "Should I?" "Most people do." "Are you good at your job?" "Good enough." "Then that's all I need to know." After he hung up, Ethan poured himself another drink and sat on the back porch. The night was cold, the kind of November cold that promised winter was coming and didn't care if you were ready. He thought about Nora's note. "Thank you for seeing me." Such a simple thing. Being seen. Being acknowledged as a person who mattered. He'd given her coffee and stood up to a security guard, and that was it. That was the sum total of his heroism. And somehow it had spiraled into lawsuits and sabotage, and his daughter getting into fights at school. Was it worth it? Marcus's question kept bouncing around his head. At some point, you have to ask yourself if it's worth it. The problem was, he didn't know how to measure worth. Was Nora's dignity worth more than Maya's social standing? Was standing up to bullies worth more than the diner opening on time? Was being right worth more than being smart? There weren't easy answers. There probably weren't any answers at all. But giving up felt like betraying something fundamental. Not just Nora, but the idea that people deserved basic decency, regardless of their circumstances. That wealth and power didn't give you the right to erase the inconvenient. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop asking questions or you'll regret it." Ethan stared at the message. It was vague enough to be deniable, specific enough to be a threat. He screenshot it and forwarded it to Marcus, then deleted the original. Let them threaten. Let them sabotage and sue and spread rumors. He wasn't backing down. Not now. Not when he was finally fighting for something that mattered. The preliminary hearing was held in a courtroom that smelled like old wood and stale coffee. Dale and his lawyers sat on one side, Ethan and Marcus on the other. The judge was a woman in her 60s who looked like she'd heard every variation of bullshit the legal system had to offer and wasn't impressed by any of it. Dale's lawyer went first. He was young, expensive suit, the kind of guy who'd learned to argue by watching TV lawyers, and thought volume equaled persuasion. "Your Honor, Mr. Marlowe's behavior has created a hostile environment for local businesses. His verbal assault on my client, his refusal to comply with reasonable community standards, and his continuing harassment constitute a pattern of conduct that requires immediate intervention." The judge looked at Ethan. "You tell this man to fuck off?" "Yes, Your Honor." "In public?" "Yes." "Any reason why?" He was celebrating the fact that a homeless woman felt forced to leave the neighborhood because of harassment from his organization. Dale's lawyer jumped in. "That's a mischaracterization." The judge held up her hand. I'm talking to Mr. Marlowe. She turned back to Ethan. You know this woman well. No, Your Honor. I gave her coffee in the mornings. That's all. And that made you mad enough to curse at people on the street? It made me mad that they treated her like she wasn't human. The judge leaned back in her chair. Mr. Webb, your client have anything else to add? Marcus stood up. Your Honor, we'd like to submit evidence that the plaintiff and his associates have engaged in a coordinated effort to sabotage my client's business. We have emails showing, I've read your filings. The emails are suggestive but not conclusive. She looked at Dale's lawyer. That said, your defamation claim is weak. Truth is a defense, and nothing Mr. Marlowe said rises to the level of actionable slander. Your Honor, the emotional distress, save it. Here's what's going to happen. Both of you are going to go home and think about whether you really want to spend the next year of your lives in my courtroom fighting over hurt feelings. Mr. Marlowe, stop cursing at people. Mr. Kramer, stop filing frivolous lawsuits. And both of you find a way to coexist like adults. Your Honor, Dale's lawyer tried again. We're done. Case dismissed without prejudice, which means either of you can refile if you really want to waste more money. But I'm telling you now, it'll go the same way. She banged her gavel. Next case. Outside the courthouse, Marcus was grinning. That went better than expected. They can still refile. They won't. The judge basically called it bullshit. If they try again, she'll sanction them. So, we won? You survived. That's not the same as winning, but it's not losing either. Ethan looked across the courthouse steps to where Dale and his lawyers were standing in a tight circle, clearly arguing about what to do next. Dale caught his eye, and the look he gave Ethan was pure hatred. This wasn't over. 2 days later, Rita called. I found something. Ethan was at the diner, watching Pete finish the electrical work. He stepped outside so he could hear better. What'd you find? Your girl Nora. She's not homeless. Or at least she wasn't always. Found a Nora Vale in county records. Eviction notice from 3 years ago. Couple of court appearances for unpaid fines. Before that, she had a job at a medical billing company. What happened? Far as I can tell, husband died. Insurance didn't cover the medical bills. She went into debt trying to keep her head above water. Lost the apartment, lost custody of her daughter, fell through the cracks. Ethan felt something twist in his chest. You find where she is now? That's the weird part. She disappeared from the system about 2 weeks ago. No shelter check-ins, no arrests, no hospital visits. It's like she just vanished. People don't just vanish. Homeless people do, all the time. But here's the thing. I talked to a guy who runs a shelter downtown. He said a woman matching Nora's description came in about 10 days ago, stayed one night, then left with someone. Someone who? He didn't get a good look. Just said it was professional, like a social worker or something, but she left willingly. Can you find out more? I can try. But Ethan, I gotta tell you, this is starting to feel like more than just a missing person case. You sure you want me to keep digging? Why wouldn't I? Because sometimes the answers you find aren't the ones you want. After Rita hung up, Ethan stood outside the diner and watched the street. The same street where he'd given Nora coffee every morning. The same doorway where she'd sat, wrapped in that ratty sleeping bag, watching the world go by. She'd had a whole life, a job, a home, a daughter. And it had all fallen apart because her husband got sick and the system that was supposed to help had ground her into dust instead. And then she'd disappeared with someone who looked professional. That should have been good news. It should have meant she'd found help, found a way out. But something about it didn't sit right. He pulled out his phone and called Marcus. I need you to look into something. Marcus called back within the hour. What am I looking into? Ethan was still standing outside the diner watching the morning traffic crawl past. Nora Vale. I need to know if there's any record of where she went after she left the shelter. Social services, hospitals, anything. That's not really my area. I know, but you have access to databases I don't. And Rita's hitting walls. A pause. You're worried about her. Wouldn't you be? Honestly, I'd be more worried about you. You're getting obsessed with someone you barely know. She's not just someone. Then what is she? Ethan didn't have a good answer for that. Nora wasn't family, wasn't a friend, wasn't even really an acquaintance. She was a woman he'd given coffee to for a few weeks. That was it. Except it wasn't. Because somewhere in those quiet morning exchanges, she'd become something more, a reminder that people mattered even when the world decided they didn't. That seeing someone, really seeing them, was worth fighting for. She's someone who deserves better than disappearing and nobody giving a shit, Ethan said finally. Marcus sighed. I'll make some calls, but Ethan, you need to prepare yourself for the possibility that she doesn't want to be found. That wherever she went, it was her choice. Then I need to know that too. After hanging up, Ethan went back inside. Pete was testing the new electrical panel, flipping breakers and checking voltages with a multimeter that looked older than both of them. We're good, Pete said. Everything's up to code. Better than code, actually. When can I schedule the inspection? Whenever you want. But I'm telling you, they're going to find something else wrong. They always do. Let them try. Pete packed up his tools and headed out, leaving Ethan alone in the gutted building. The space still looked like a war zone. Exposed studs, bare concrete, piles of debris in the corners. But the bones were good. The foundation was solid. With enough time and money, it could be something worth having. If they'd let him finish it. His phone buzzed, a text from Maya's school again. Maya didn't show up for third period. Please confirm she's with you. Ethan's stomach dropped. He dialed Maya's phone. It went straight to voicemail. He tried the school. Principal Chen answered on the third ring. Mr. Marlowe, is Maya with you? No. Where is she? She was marked present for homeroom and second period, but she didn't arrive for English. We've checked the bathrooms and the library. She's not on school grounds. Did anyone see her leave? Not that we're aware of. We're reviewing security footage now. Ethan was already moving toward his truck. Call me the second you find anything. He drove home first, hoping maybe she'd gotten sick and walked back. The house was empty, her backpack was gone, her room untouched from this morning. He called her phone again. Voicemail. Then he started driving, checking the route between school and home, scanning the sidewalks for any sign of her. His mind was racing through possibilities, each one worse than the last. She'd run away. She'd been taken. She'd been hurt. He forced himself to breathe, to think logically. Maya was smart. She wouldn't just disappear without a reason. And if she had run, she'd go somewhere she felt safe. The diner. He turned around and headed back, pushing the speed limit, running a yellow light that was already halfway to red. When he pulled up outside the construction site, he saw her through the gap in the plywood. She was sitting on the floor in the middle of the empty space, her backpack beside her, staring at nothing. Ethan parked and went inside, trying to keep his voice calm. Maya. She looked up. Her eyes were red, her face blotchy from crying. Hey, he said, sitting down next to her. The school's looking for you. I know. Want to tell me what happened? She pulled her knees up to her chest. Joey told everyone that Nora was probably a drug addict, that you're stupid for helping her, that her mom says we're trash and we don't belong here. And what'd you do? Nothing. I just left. Left school? I couldn't be there anymore. Everyone was looking at me like I was the problem. She wiped her nose on her sleeve. I hate it here, Dad. I hate this town, and I hate that school, and I hate that everyone thinks we're wrong for being nice. Ethan put his arm around her and pulled her close. She was shaking, and he realized she wasn't just upset. She was scared. Scared that they'd lose the fight, that they'd have to leave, that the world really was as cruel as it seemed. I'm sorry, he said. It's not your fault. Kind of is. I brought us here. I thought it would be better than the life we had before. It was lonely before. Just different lonely. That hit harder than it should have. Because she was right. Their old life had been isolated in its own way. Big house, private school, people who only talked to them because of the money. He'd thought moving to a normal town would fix that. Instead, he'd just traded one kind of isolation for another. What do you want to do? He asked. About what? All of it. The diner, the town, the school. If you want to leave, we can leave. I'll sell the building, we'll move somewhere else, start over. Maya was quiet for a long time. Then she said, What about Nora? What about her? If we leave, who's going to look for her? I hired someone, a private investigator. But you'll stop if we go, right? Because it won't matter anymore. Ethan hadn't thought about it that way, but she was right. If they left Denton Falls, the whole thing would fade into just another story about good intentions gone wrong. Nora would become a footnote, a woman they'd tried to help who disappeared into the same system that had failed her before. "I don't know," he said honestly. "Then we can't leave. Not yet." "Maya, I'm serious. I hate it here, but leaving means they win. And I don't want them to win." She sounded so much older than 7, so much tougher than she should have to be. "Okay," Ethan said. "We'll stay, but you can't skip school. Deal?" "Deal. But I'm not apologizing to Joey." "Wouldn't ask you to." He called the school and told them Maya was with him, that she'd felt sick and walked to his work site instead of going to the nurse. It was a lie, but a small one. Principal Chen didn't sound convinced, but said they'd mark it as an excused absence this time. They sat in the empty diner for another hour, not talking much, just being together in the space that had caused all this trouble. Eventually, Maya fell asleep with her head on his shoulder, exhausted from crying and fear and the weight of being a kid in an adult fight. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Rita. "Call me. Found something big." He carefully shifted Maya so she was lying down, put his jacket under her head, and stepped outside to call. "What'd you find?" Rita's voice was different now, sharper. "Nora isn't who you think she is." "What does that mean?" "Means I dug deeper into her background. The eviction, the custody loss, the job at the medical billing company, it's all true, but there's more. Her maiden name was Nora Hendricks, and before she married, she worked for a private equity firm in Chicago." So that firm specialized in acquiring struggling businesses and either turning them around or liquidating them. And one of their biggest clients was Hendricks Capital Group. The name didn't mean anything to Ethan. "I don't follow." Hendricks Capital is a multi-billion-dollar investment fund. They own properties all over the country, including several commercial buildings in Denton Falls. And Nora Hendricks is the daughter of Richard Hendricks, the guy who founded it. Ethan felt the ground shift under him. "You're saying Nora's rich?" "Was rich. According to court records, her father cut her off when she married someone he didn't approve of. She's been estranged from the family for years. But here's the thing. Richard Hendricks died 8 months ago, and when he did, control of Hendricks Capital transferred to a trust that lists Nora as the primary beneficiary." "How much are we talking?" "Conservatively, $3 billion, maybe more." Ethan had to sit down. The concrete was cold under him, but he barely noticed. "So she's homeless but worth $3 billion? Not homeless? Not anymore." Because here's where it gets interesting. 2 weeks ago, a law firm in Chicago filed paperwork to locate Nora, formerly Nora Hendricks. They hired private investigators, put out notices, the whole thing. And 5 days ago, someone matching her description was picked up from a shelter in Denton Falls by a representative of that law firm. Why didn't she tell me? Why would she? You were some guy who gave her coffee. For all she knew, you'd try to get money out of her if you found out. Ethan's mind was reeling. Every morning for weeks, he'd handed coffee to a woman who could have bought the entire town without blinking, and she'd never said a word. Where is she now? That I don't know. The law firm's not returning calls, and there's no public record of where she went after they picked her up. But Ethan, you need to understand what this means. If Nora's taken control of Hendricks Capital, she's got more power than everyone in Denton Falls combined, including Dale Kramer. Why would she stay on the street if she knew she was about to inherit billions? Maybe she didn't know. Or maybe she was waiting to see if anyone would help her when she had nothing. People with that kind of money, they learn real quick who's real and who's playing an angle. After Rita hung up, Ethan sat there trying to process it all. The quiet woman in the doorway, the thank you note, the way she'd watched the neighborhood with those too alert eyes, like she was seeing more than anyone realized. She'd been testing them, testing him, and he'd passed without knowing there was a test. But if that was true, why hadn't she reached out? Why disappear without a word, leaving him to wonder if she was safe while she was probably sitting in some penthouse in Chicago? Unless she wasn't done testing. Unless whatever came next was the real measure of who he was. He went back inside and woke Maya up gently. "Come on, kiddo. Let's go home." She rubbed her eyes. "Did something happen?" "Yeah, but I'll explain in the car." On the drive home, he told her what Rita had found. Maya listened without interrupting, her expression cycling through disbelief, confusion, and finally something that looked almost like relief. "So she's okay," Maya said. "Looks like it. And she's rich. Very rich. But she let everyone treat her like trash anyway." Yeah. Why? I don't know. Maybe she wanted to see how people acted when they thought she didn't matter. Maya thought about that. That's kind of mean. Maybe. Or maybe it's smart. Way to figure out who's real. Are you mad at her? Ethan considered it. Was he mad? Nora had lied by omission, let him worry, let him fight battles on her behalf when she could have solved everything with a phone call and a check. But she'd also been alone on the street. She'd lost her daughter, her husband, her life. And when her father's death gave her a way out, she'd still sat in that doorway morning after morning, watching to see if anyone would treat her like a person. No, he said finally. I'm not mad. Do you think she'll come back? I don't know. But 3 days later, she did. Ethan was at the diner early, before the sun was up, working on the interior framing. He heard the vehicles before he saw them, the low rumble of expensive engines, the kind of sound you only get from cars that cost more than most houses. He stepped outside and watched 3 black SUVs pull up to the curb in perfect formation. The doors opened in unison, and men in dark suits stepped out. They weren't security guards. They were professionals, the kind who carried themselves like they could handle any situation without breaking a sweat. Then Nora stepped out of the middle vehicle. She looked different. Clean, for one thing. Her hair was cut and styled, her clothes were tailored, her shoes probably cost what he'd spent on Maya's entire wardrobe. But it was more than that. She carried herself differently. Straighter. More certain. The woman from the doorway was gone. In her place was someone who'd remembered what power felt like. She walked toward him, and the men in suits fanned out behind her like a living barrier. Hello, Ethan. Her voice was the same. That was the only thing that hadn't changed. Nora. He didn't know what else to say. The script for this conversation didn't exist. I'm sorry I left without explaining. You don't owe me an explanation. I think I do. She looked at the diner, at the construction mess visible through the door. Can we talk inside? He let her in. The men in suits stayed outside, forming a perimeter that made the whole street look like a crime scene. Inside, Nora walked slowly around the space, taking in the exposed beams, the new electrical panel, the framing that was starting to give shape to what the diner would eventually become. You've been working hard, she said, trying to. I heard about the lawsuit, the permit issues, Dale Kramer making your life difficult. News travels fast. I've been keeping track. She turned to face him. I know what you did. Standing up to the security guard, the scene on the street, fighting the business association even when it cost you. You were watching. I'm always watching. It's what I do. She walked over to where he was standing. Up close, he could see she was tired. The polish was surface level, covering something deeper that hadn't healed. My father taught me that people show you who they really are when they think nobody important is looking. He was right. Most people failed that test. But not me. Not you. You treated me like a person when you had no reason to, no agenda, no expectations, just basic human decency. That's a low bar. You'd be surprised how many people can't clear it. She pulled an envelope from her jacket. I want to invest in your diner. Why? Because you deserve it. Because this town needs someone like you, and because I owe you. Ethan looked at the envelope but didn't take it. You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. You were the only person in this entire town who saw me as human. That matters. It was just coffee. It was never just coffee. It was proof that decency still exists. And I need to believe that, Ethan. I need to believe that not everyone is plain and angle, that kindness doesn't always come with a price tag. She held out the envelope. This is a contract, partnership agreement. I provide the capital, you run the diner. 50-50 split on everything. No strings, no hidden clauses. Just a fair deal between two people who both want to build something good. Ethan took the envelope but didn't open it. How much capital are we talking about? Whatever you need. Enough to finish the renovations, cover the legal fees, keep things running until you're profitable. And enough to make Dale Kramer understand he picked the wrong fight. I don't want revenge money. It's not revenge. It's investment. I've looked at your plans. They're solid. This diner could work. But not if you're spending all your energy fighting bureaucrats and watching your back. What if I say no? Nora smiled, and for a second he saw a flash of the woman from the doorway. Then I'll respect your choice and leave you alone. But Ethan, you've been fighting this battle by yourself for months. Let someone help for once. He thought about Maya in the empty diner, crying because the world was cruel, about the lawsuit and the sabotage and the endless grinding war of attrition, about the fact that he'd started this to prove something, that money didn't have to corrupt, that normal life was possible, that he could raise his daughter around real people. But real people included Nora, and Nora was offering him a way to win without compromising who he was. I need to think about it, he said. Take all the time you need. But Ethan, those men outside, they're not just security. They're lawyers, investigators, people who know how to make problems disappear. Dale Kramer's been running this town through intimidation and connections. That ends today, whether you partner with me or not. What are you going to do? Show him what happens when you try to bully someone who can actually fight back. She walked to the door, then paused. For what it's worth, the coffee meant more to me than you'll ever know. It reminded me that I was still a person worth seeing. Thank you for that. Then she was gone, climbing back into the SUV and disappearing down the street with her convoy of protection and power. Ethan stood in the empty diner holding an envelope that might contain the solution to all his problems, and all he could think was that nothing about this felt right. Not because Nora was wrong, but because taking her money felt like admitting he couldn't do it alone. And he'd spent so long trying to prove he could. He opened the envelope. Inside was a partnership contract exactly as she'd described. 50-50 split, no hidden clauses, clean terms that any lawyer would approve, and attached to it, a personal check for $200,000 with a note. To get you started. More available when needed. He folded it back up and put it in his pocket. Then he called Marcus. I need you to look at a contract. What kind of contract? The kind that might solve all my problems or create a whole new set. Sounds about right for your life. Bring it by. Before Ethan could leave, Dale Kramer appeared in the doorway. He looked shaken, his usual smug confidence replaced by something close to panic. We need to talk, Dale said. I don't think we do. Please, just 5 minutes. Ethan crossed his arms. Clock's ticking. Dale stepped inside and closed the door behind him like he was afraid of being overheard. That woman you were helping. I didn't know who she was. Neither did I. She owns half the commercial properties in this town. My store, the coffee shop, the office building where the business association meets. She owns all of it through her family's investment fund. And she just had her lawyers deliver notices. Every lease is up for review. Every property owner needs to renegotiate terms or face eviction. Ethan felt a cold satisfaction settle in his chest. Sounds like a business decision. It's retaliation. She's punishing everyone who gave you trouble. Maybe she's just reevaluating her investments. Bullshit. This is because of you. Because we tried to make that homeless woman leave. Dale's voice cracked. I could lose everything. Welcome to how the rest of the world lives. Please, I'm asking you to talk to her. Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I'll do whatever she wants. Why would I do that? Because you're a good person. Because you don't want to see people lose their livelihoods over a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding, Dale. You tried to hurt someone because they were poor and powerless. The only difference now is that she's not powerless anymore. So that's it? You're just going to let her destroy everyone? Ethan walked to the door and opened it. I think we're done here. Dale started to say something else, then seemed to realize it was pointless. He left without another word, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Ethan watched him go and felt absolutely nothing. Later that day, he sat down with Marcus and went over the contract. It's clean, Marcus said after reading it twice. Surprisingly clean, actually. No poison pills, no hidden obligations. She's offering you a genuine partnership. So you think I should sign it? I think that's not a legal question. That's a you question. What would you do? Marcus leaned back in his chair. Honestly, I'd take it. You've been trying to do this alone because you wanted to prove something. But Ethan, you already proved it. You stood up when nobody else would. You fought back when it would have been easier to quit. You've got nothing left to prove. Feels like giving up. Feels like accepting help. There's a difference. That night, Ethan sat at his kitchen table with Maya doing homework across from him. The contract was spread out between them. What do you think? He asked her. Maya looked up from her math problems. About what? Taking Nora's money, becoming partners. She thought about it with the seriousness of someone way older than 7. Will it help you finish the diner? Yeah. Will it make the bad people stop being mean? Probably. Then you should do it. as long as you're still being nice. What if taking the money makes me not nice? Dad, you're literally the nicest person I know. Money's not going to change that. Out of the mouths of children. Ethan picked up a pen and signed the contract. The next morning at 6:40, he walked outside with 2 cups of coffee and found Nora waiting in the doorway where she used to sit. She was wearing jeans and a sweater, no bodyguards in sight. He handed her one of the cups. "You signed it," she said. "How'd you know?" "Because you wouldn't be here if you hadn't." They stood there drinking coffee as the sun came up over Denton Falls, and Ethan realized that for the first time in months, he felt something close to hope. "Partners?" Nora asked. "Partners?" he agreed. And just like that, everything changed. The partnership changed things faster than Ethan expected. Within a week, the permit approvals that had been stalled for months suddenly moved forward. The building inspector who'd found violations in perfectly good work suddenly discovered his previous reports had been premature. The fire marshal signed off on everything without comment. Even the health department, which had flagged the plumbing as a biohazard, sent a letter stating all concerns had been addressed. Ethan knew what had happened. Nora's lawyers had made it clear that fighting her was a losing proposition. The same people who'd bent the rules to hurt him were now bending them back to help. It should have felt like winning. Instead, it felt like confirmation that the system had always been broken. You just needed the right kind of power to make it work in your favor. "You're overthinking it," Marcus said when Ethan mentioned his concerns. They were standing in the diner, watching a crew Nora had hired install new flooring. Professional contractors this time, not Ethan doing everything himself with Pete's occasional help. "Am I? Because it feels like I spent months trying to do this the right way, and all it took was one billionaire making phone calls to fix everything. Welcome to how the world actually works." That's depressing. That's reality. You want to change the system, you need power. Nora's giving you power. Use it. But that was the problem. Ethan hadn't wanted power. He'd wanted to prove that regular people could build something good without needing connections or leverage or the threat of legal warfare. He'd wanted Maya to see that doing the right thing mattered more than doing the expedient thing. Now he wasn't sure what lesson she was learning. Maya, for her part, seemed less conflicted. She'd taken to visiting the diner after school, doing homework in the corner while workers installed counters and built out the kitchen. Nora stopped by most afternoons, sometimes in expensive suits from morning meetings, sometimes in jeans looking like she'd just rolled out of bed. The two of them had formed an unlikely friendship. Nora would help Maya with math homework, and Maya would tell her about the drama at school with the brutal honesty only kids could pull off. "Joey's still being a jerk," Maya said one afternoon, erasing a wrong answer hard enough to tear the paper. "What's she saying now?" Nora asked. "That you're only being nice to us because Dad's good looking." Nora laughed, a sound Ethan had heard maybe twice since she'd revealed who she was. "Is that so?" "I told her that was stupid. You're like 1,000,000,000 years old." "I'm 42. "See? Old." Ethan tried not to smile. "Maya, that's rude." "But true," Nora said. She looked at Maya's homework. "You made a mistake on number 7. The equation's right, but your negative sign's in the wrong place." Maya fixed it, then looked up at Nora with the directness kids had before the world taught them to be subtle. "Do you miss your daughter?" The question hung in the air like something physical. Ethan started to intervene. That was too personal, too raw, but Nora held up a hand. "Every day," she said quietly. "Do you know where she is?" "Yes. She was adopted by a family in Minnesota. Good people, from what I can tell. She's 10 now." "Have you seen her?" "No. The adoption was closed. Legally, I gave up my rights when I signed the papers." "That's stupid. You're her mom." "Biology doesn't make you a parent. Taking care of someone does. And I couldn't take care of her, not then." "What about now? You have money now. You could get her back." Nora's expression was careful, controlled, but Ethan could see the cracks underneath. "It doesn't work that way, sweetie. She has a family, a real family. Going back into her life now would just confuse her." "But don't you want to?" "Wanting something doesn't mean it's the right thing to do." Maya thought about that, then went back to her homework without commenting. But Ethan saw her glance at Nora a few more times, like she was trying to figure something out. That night, after Maya was in bed, Ethan's phone rang. It was Nora. "Can you meet me at the diner?" "Now?" "Yeah, I need to talk to you about something." When he arrived, she was sitting on the new counter, legs swinging, looking at the space like she was trying to memorize it. The overhead lights were harsh, showing every imperfection in the construction. The uneven grout lines, the scratch on the stainless steel backsplash, the spot where the paint was slightly thinner. "What's wrong?" Ethan asked. "Maya asked me about my daughter today." "I know. I'm sorry. I should have told her that was off limits." "No, she should ask. It's a reasonable question." Nora jumped down from the counter, but it got me thinking about why I'm really doing this. Doing what? This, the partnership, the diner, all of it. I told myself it was because you deserved help. Because this town needed someone like you. But that's not the whole truth. What's the rest of it? She walked over to the window, looking out at the dark street. I'm trying to buy redemption. I failed my daughter. I failed my marriage. I failed at being the person my father wanted me to be. And when I ended up on the street, I convinced myself it was some kind of test. That if I could survive it, if I could find one person who saw me as human, it would prove I was still worth something. You are worth something. Am I? Or am I just a broken woman with money trying to fix her guilt by throwing cash at a stranger's problems? Ethan walked over to stand next to her. Outside, the street was empty except for a cat prowling near the alley. You want the truth? Always. I think you're both. Broken and trying. Guilty and generous. Nobody's one thing, Nora. We're all just doing the best we can with what we've got. That's disappointingly philosophical for this time of night. Yeah, well, you called me out here. This is what you get. She smiled a little. Maya asked if I was going to try to get my daughter back. What'd you tell her? That it wouldn't be fair to disrupt her life. That she's happy where she is. That being a parent means putting your kid first even when it kills you. You believe that? I have to, because if I don't, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I gave up too easily. They stood there in silence for a while. Then Nora said, I hired an investigator to check on her. Monthly reports, just to make sure she's okay. Her adoptive parents are good people, a teacher and a nurse. They take her camping, help with homework, show up to her soccer games. She's thriving. And that's enough for you? It has to be. But what if it's not? Nora turned to look at him. What are you saying? I'm saying that putting your kid first doesn't always mean staying away. Sometimes it means fighting to be part of their life. Maya asked you that question because she sees how much you're hurting. Kids notice that stuff. I can't just show up after 8 years and expect her to want me back. No, but you could start small. A letter. Let her know you exist, that you think about her, that you're sorry. Let her decide if she wants contact. What if she doesn't? Then at least you tried. And someday when she's older, she'll know you cared enough to reach out. Nora looked like she was going to argue, then stopped. When did you get so wise about parenting? Trial and error, mostly error. Maya's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. She keeps me honest. Nora pulled out her phone and stared at it for a long moment, then put it away. I'll think about it. That's all I'm asking. But as Ethan drove home, he wondered if he'd overstepped. Nora's relationship with her daughter wasn't his business. He was her business partner, not her therapist. Pushing her to make contact might do more harm than good. Then again, Maya had asked the question for a reason, and Maya had a way of cutting through bullshit to get to the heart of things. Maybe some risks were worth taking. The diner opened 6 weeks later on a cold January morning. The place looked nothing like Ethan's original vision. It was better. Nora had hired a designer who understood the concept of comfortable without making it look cheap. The booths were real leather, worn enough to feel lived in. The counter had the right amount of shine. The kitchen was professional grade but visible from the dining room, so customers could watch their food being made. It looked like a place people would want to come back to. The opening had been advertised in the local paper and on social media. Ethan had expected maybe 20 people to show up. Instead, there was a line out the door by 7 in the morning. Some came out of curiosity. Some came because they'd heard the story. Billionaire opens diner, partners with formerly homeless woman, takes on the business association, and wins. Some came because the food was supposed to be good and the prices were fair. Dale Kramer didn't come. Neither did most of the business association members. But their absence was noticeable in a way that felt like victory. Ethan worked the counter while Nora handled the register. Maya was supposed to be at school, but she'd convinced them to let her skip for the opening. She sat at the end of the counter, greeting customers and telling anyone who'd listen that she'd helped pick out the paint colors. By noon, they'd served 200 people. By closing at 9, they'd gone through 3 times the food Ethan had ordered. The kitchen crew was exhausted, the servers were running on fumes, and the register had more money than Ethan had seen in one place in months. After the last customer left, Nora locked the door and leaned against it. "We did it," she said. "We did. I mean, actually did it. This place works." Ethan looked around at the dirty plates waiting to be bussed, the crumbs on the floor, the coffee stains on the counter. It was a mess. It was perfect. "Yeah," he said. "It does." Maya was asleep in a booth, her head on her backpack, completely wiped out. Ethan picked her up, and she barely stirred, just mumbled something about needing more napkins, and went back to sleep. Nora walked them out to the truck. The street was quiet now, the neighborhood settling in for the night. "Thank you," Ethan said. "For what?" "For this. For believing in it. For being stubborn enough to test an entire town just to find one person who'd treat you decent. You made it easy." "I really didn't. I was just trying not to be an asshole." "That's rarer than you think." He settled Maya in the passenger seat and buckled her in. When he turned back, Nora was holding an envelope. "What's this?" "Profit share from today. 50-50, like we agreed." Ethan looked at the envelope but didn't take it. "We just opened. Let's make sure we're actually profitable before we start dividing money." "Ethan, I'm serious. Keep it. Reinvest it. Whatever you want. But I don't need it right now." "You're supposed to be a partner, not a charity case." "I'm a partner who's got enough to live on. You're a partner who just got control of a multi-billion-dollar trust. I think we can afford to have different definitions of what we need." Nora put the envelope back in her pocket. "You're stubborn. Learned from the best." She smiled, and it reached her eyes this time. "Get your daughter home. We've got an early morning tomorrow." "More of this?" "More of this. Every day." As Ethan drove home with Maya sleeping beside him, he thought about everything that had led to this moment. The coffee, the confrontation, the lawsuit, the partnership. All of it stemming from a simple decision to treat another person with basic human decency. It shouldn't have been revolutionary, but somehow it was. The diner's success brought unexpected attention. Local news ran a story about the opening. Then regional outlets picked it up. Within 2 weeks, there was a feature in a national magazine about the billionaire and the formerly homeless woman who'd built a restaurant empire on the principle of treating people right. Ethan hated the publicity. Every article focused on the drama, Dale's harassment, Nora's secret identity, the lawsuit. They turned a simple story about kindness into some kind of morality play, about class warfare and redemption. But the publicity brought customers. And customers brought money. And money meant they could hire more staff, expand the menu, think about opening a second location. It also brought Dale Kramer to the diner one evening, hat in hand. Ethan was closing up when he saw Dale standing outside, looking like he was gathering courage to enter. After a minute, he did. "We're closed," Ethan said. "I know. I just need a minute." Clock's ticking. Dale looked older than he had 2 months ago. The smugness was gone, replaced by something that looked almost like humility. "I came to apologize." "For what? Harassing Nora or trying to sabotage my business?" "Both. All of it." Dale sat down at the counter uninvited. "I lost my lease. Nora's company didn't renew it. The sporting goods store is closing next month." "And you want me to talk to her?" "No. I mean, yes, but that's not why I'm here." He rubbed his face. "I'm here because I was wrong. About everything. About you, about that woman, about what this neighborhood needed. I thought I was protecting something valuable, but really, I was just protecting my own position." "You were protecting your ego." "Yeah, that too." Dale looked at him. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know." Ethan leaned against the counter. Part of him wanted to tell Dale to get out, that his apology was too little too late. But another part remembered what he'd told Maya, that being better meant not becoming the thing you were fighting against. "I'll talk to Nora," he said. "No promises, but I'll ask if she'd consider extending your lease." "Why would you do that?" "Because holding grudges is exhausting, and because I want Maya to see that people can change." "I don't deserve this." "Probably not, but that's not really the point." Dale stood up, started to offer his hand, then thought better of it. "Thank you. After he left, Ethan called Nora. Dale came by. I heard. Security texted me. You have security watching the diner? Of course I do. You think I'm going to let anything happen to our investment? Dale apologized. Good for him. He wants his lease renewed. Silence on the other end. Then, what do you think I should do? I think you should decide what kind of person you want to be. The one who punishes people forever, or the one who gives them a chance to do better. Those aren't mutually exclusive. No. But one feels better than the other. More silence. Then Nora sighed. I'll have my lawyers draw up a new lease. Market rate, no special treatment. If he can't afford it, that's on him. Fair enough. Ethan? Yeah? You're too nice. Someone's going to take advantage of that someday. Maybe. But I'd rather be taken advantage of than turn into someone who can't forgive. After hanging up, Ethan finished closing and headed home. The house was quiet when he got there, Maya already asleep. He checked on her, pulled her blanket up, and stood in her doorway watching her breathe. She looked peaceful, younger than she seemed during the day when she was busy being tough and cynical and protective of her father. He wanted to keep her that way, protected, safe, sheltered from the worst of what people could be. But he also wanted her to understand that the world was complicated, that people could be cruel and kind, that forgiveness was hard but worthwhile, that doing the right thing didn't always mean winning. The next morning, Nora showed up at the house before Ethan left for the diner. I did it, she said without preamble. Did what? Wrote the letter, to my daughter. She held up an envelope. I've been carrying it around for 2 days trying to decide if I should mail it. What's stopping you? Terror. What if she doesn't want to hear from me? What if her parents think I'm trying to disrupt their family? What if I'm being selfish? What if you're being brave? Nora looked at the envelope. Maya said something yesterday. She asked if I thought my daughter ever wondered about me. And I realized I've been so focused on not hurting her that I never considered she might have questions too. That knowing I thought about her might matter. So send it. What if it's a mistake? Then it's a mistake you can live with. Better than the mistake of never trying. Nora stared at the envelope for another long moment, then pulled out her phone and took a picture of it. Proof that I actually wrote it, so I can't chicken out later. You want me to mail it for you? Would you? Ethan took the envelope. The address was in Minnesota, written in Nora's careful handwriting. I'll drop it off at the post office this morning. Thank you. She looked relieved and terrified in equal measure. I don't know what I'm expecting. She's 10. She might not even read it. She'll read it, and even if she doesn't respond, she'll know. That's what matters. After Nora left, Ethan looked at the envelope. Inside was a letter from a mother to a daughter, 8 years of regret and hope compressed into whatever words Nora had managed to put on paper. He hoped it was enough. At the post office, he stood at the mailbox for a solid minute before dropping it in. The envelope disappeared into the slot with a soft thud, gone into the system that would carry it across the country to a girl who might not even remember the woman who'd given birth to her. But at least Nora had tried. At least she'd reached out. The rest was up to fate, or chance, or whatever force decided how these things turned out. The diner hit its rhythm over the next month. They found their regulars, the construction crew that came in every morning at 6, the retired couple who split a slice of pie every afternoon, the high school kids who camped out in the corner booth doing homework and nursing sodas for hours. Ethan learned their names, their orders, the small details that made them feel seen. It was what his father had done in his diners, what Ethan had always imagined doing when he started this project. It felt right. Maya had stopped getting in fights at school. Joey still gave her grief, but Maya had learned to ignore it. Or maybe she'd just realized that having a successful diner made her less of a target than being the weird kid whose dad tried to help homeless people. Either way, things were better. Nora still came by most days, though less frequently as she got pulled into managing her father's company. She was based in Chicago now, but she kept an apartment in Denton Falls and made the drive whenever she could. How's it feel being a billionaire businesswoman? Ethan asked one afternoon while they were reviewing the books. Exhausting, boring, necessary. She closed the ledger. I'm trying to change how the company operates, make it less about maximizing profit and more about sustainable investment. My father's old partners think I'm insane. Are you? Probably, but I've got controlling interests, so they can't stop me. Must be nice having that kind of power. It's terrifying. Every decision affects hundreds of people. If I screw up, they lose jobs, homes, livelihoods. She looked around the diner. This is easier. I make a bad call here, we lose money, nobody's life falls apart. Just ours. Just ours. And honestly, that feels manageable. 2 weeks later, Nora got a response. She called Ethan from Chicago, her voice shaking. She wrote back, "Your daughter?" Her adoptive mother, actually, said they'd been wondering if I'd ever reach out. Said Emma, that's her name, Emma, had asked about me last year, wanted to know if I thought about her. What'd they tell her? That they didn't know. That adoption meant she had a family who loved her, but it didn't erase where she came from. Nora's voice cracked. They want to set up a video call. Let Emma meet me, see if she's interested in contact. That's good, right? It's terrifying. What if she hates me? What if she asks why I gave her up and I don't have a good answer? You have an answer. You were in a bad place and you did what you thought was best for her. That sounds like a cop-out. It sounds like the truth. The video call was scheduled for the following Saturday. Nora asked Ethan and Maya to be there with her for moral support. They met at Nora's apartment in Denton Falls. She'd set up her laptop on the kitchen table, tested the camera 3 times, changed her shirt twice, and was visibly shaking when the call connected. A woman appeared on screen first. Mid-30s, kind face, wearing a Minnesota Twins sweatshirt. Nora? Yes. Hi. Thank you for doing this. Of course, Emma's been really excited. The woman glanced off camera. Are you ready, sweetie? A girl appeared on screen. 10 years old, dark hair like Nora's, same pale green eyes. She looked nervous but curious. Hi, Emma said quietly. Hi. Nora's voice was barely a whisper. I'm Nora, your birth mother. I know, Mom told me. Emma glanced at her adoptive mother, who gave her an encouraging nod. Why did you give me away? The question hung there, direct and painful. Ethan saw Nora flinch. Because I couldn't take care of you, Nora said. Your father had just died, I had no money, no home, no way to give you what you needed, and I loved you enough to know that wasn't fair to you. Do you still love me? Every single day. Then why didn't you find me sooner? Because I thought you were better off without me. I thought that showing up in your life would only confuse you, hurt you. I was wrong about that. Emma thought about this. Mom says you're really rich now. I am. Are you going to try to take me back? The fear in Emma's voice was obvious. Nora shook her head quickly. No, never. You have a family who loves you. I would never try to take that away. Then why are you here? Nora looked at Maya, who was sitting next to her. Maya gave her a small nod. Because I wanted you to know that you were wanted, Nora said. That even though I couldn't keep you, you were never forgotten. That somewhere in the world you have a birth mother who thinks about you and hopes you're happy. Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Are we going to talk again? Do you want to? Maybe. I don't know yet. That's okay. You can take all the time you need. If you want to talk again, your mom has my number. If you don't, that's okay too. What if I want to meet you in person? Nora's expression broke into something between hope and terror. Then I would love that. Whenever you're ready. They talked for another 20 minutes. Small talk about school, Emma's soccer team, the weather in Minnesota versus Illinois. It was awkward and stilted and beautiful. When the call ended, Nora sat staring at the blank screen. You did good, Ethan said. I almost cried like 5 times. She noticed. I think she liked that you cared that much. Maya, who'd been quiet the whole time, walked over and hugged Nora. She seems nice. Yeah, she does. Do you think she'll want to see you again? I don't know, but at least now she knows I exist. That's something. It was more than something. It was the beginning of something that might, with time and patience and a lot of awkward conversations, turn into a relationship, not the mother-daughter bond Nora had lost. But maybe something new. Something built on honesty instead of biology, on choice instead of obligation. As they left Nora's apartment, Maya looked up at Ethan. Dad? Yeah? I'm glad you gave her that coffee. Me too, kiddo. Do you think things happen for a reason? I think we make reasons out of the things that happen. But yeah, sometimes it feels like there's a plan. Then maybe the plan was for Nora to find us, so she could be brave enough to find Emma. Ethan pulled his daughter close as they walked to the truck. Maybe you're right. And maybe, just maybe, that was the point of all of it. The coffee, the fight, the partnership. Not the diner or the victory over Dale or the money, but the fact that one small act of kindness had created a chain reaction that brought a mother and daughter back into each other's orbits. That felt like something worth fighting for. Spring came to Denton Falls slowly, like the town wasn't sure it deserved good weather after the winter had put everyone through. The diner had been open for 4 months now, and the rhythm of the place had settled into something comfortable. Morning regulars knew Ethan would have their coffee ready before they sat down. The lunch crowd trusted that the soup would be homemade and the portions would be generous. Evening families came because their kids felt welcome and the noise didn't bother anyone. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't revolutionary. It was just a place where people felt like they mattered. Ethan was wiping down the counter one Tuesday morning when Dale Kramer walked in. He'd been coming in once a week since his store closed, always ordering the same thing, black coffee and a slice of toast. He never stayed long, never made conversation beyond the necessary pleasantries. Today, he sat down and looked uncomfortable. "Need to talk to you about something," Dale said. Ethan poured his coffee. "Listening. I'm leaving Denton Falls, took a job managing a sporting goods chain downstate. Corporate gig, decent pay, nothing special." "Congratulations. Don't patronize me, we both know I'm running away." Ethan set the coffee pot down. "Why tell me? Because I need to say something before I go. And if I don't do it now, I never will." Dale wrapped his hands around the coffee cup. "You were right about everything. I spent years thinking this town belonged to me and people like me, that we got to decide who was worthy of being here. And when you showed up treating some homeless woman like a human being, it threatened that whole worldview. I didn't do anything special. That's what made it worse. You just acted decent, and it highlighted how shitty the rest of us were being." He took a sip of coffee. "I've been thinking a lot about that morning you told me to fuck off. You looked at me like I was nothing, like my opinion, my position, my connections. None of it mattered because I'd failed the one test that actually counted. Which was treating people right when nobody's keeping score." Ethan leaned against the counter. Outside, the street was waking up. A mother walking her kid to school, a jogger with headphones, a delivery truck making its rounds. Normal life, the kind that happened whether you paid attention or not. "You didn't fail forever," Ethan said. "You failed once. Then you apologized and did better. That counts for something." "Does it? Because I still lost everything." "You lost a lease and some pride. That's not everything." Dale laughed, but it was hollow. "Easy for you to say. You've got this place, a partner who's worth billions, a daughter who thinks you hung the moon. What I get? A corporate job and a reminder that I'm replaceable. So make yourself irreplaceable. Be the guy who treats his employees decent, who fights for fair wages and honest business practices. Use what you learned here." "You really believe people can change that much?" "I think people change when they decide the cost of staying the same is too high." Ethan refilled Dale's coffee. "You came in here every week knowing everyone saw you as the guy who lost. You could have slunk away, disappeared, started over somewhere nobody knew your history. Instead, you showed up. That takes guts. Or stupidity. Maybe both. But I'll take someone who's brave and stupid over someone who's smart and cruel any day." Dale finished his coffee in silence, then stood up and put money on the counter. "For what it's worth, I hope this place lasts. It's better than anything I would have built." He left without looking back, and Ethan watched him go with the strange satisfaction of knowing that some battles didn't need winners and losers, just people figuring out how to live with what they'd done. Nora called that afternoon while Ethan was prepping for the dinner rush. "Emma wants to visit." He nearly dropped the knife he was holding. "Visit here?" "Her parents are okay with it. They're planning a trip through Chicago in June, thought they'd swing by Denton Falls for a day. Let Emma see where I've been spending my time." "How do you feel about that?" "Terrified, excited, convinced I'm going to screw it up somehow." A pause. "Will you be there?" "I know that's asking a lot, but I think I need backup in case I freeze up or say something stupid." "Of course. Maya will want to meet her too." "Is that weird having them meet?" "I don't think so. They're both smart kids who've had to deal with complicated family stuff. They'll probably get along fine." Nora was quiet for a moment. "Thank you for everything. I know I say that a lot, but I mean it. None of this happens without you handing me that first cup of coffee." Pretty sure you would have survived without my coffee. Survived, yeah. But I wouldn't be here. Wouldn't have the courage to face my daughter or run my father's company or believe that I was worth more than the worst things that happened to me. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. The weight of being someone's turning point was heavier than he'd expected. You did the work, Nora. I just showed up at the right time. Maybe, but showing up matters. After hanging up, Ethan thought about that phrase. Showing up matters. It sounded simple, almost trite. The kind of thing people put on motivational posters next to pictures of sunrises. But it was true. He'd shown up with coffee. Nora had shown up to her daughter's life. Dale had shown up to apologize. Maya showed up every day choosing kindness, even when it would have been easier to be cruel. All of it was just showing up and trying to do better than yesterday. Maya came to the diner after school like she always did, dumping her backpack in the corner booth and raiding the kitchen for whatever leftovers the cook would give her. Emma's coming to visit, Ethan told her. Maya's eyes went wide. When? June. Just for a day. Are we going to hang out? If she wants to, but Maya, this is a big deal for Nora. Emma might be nervous or overwhelmed or not want to talk much. We need to give her space. I know. I'm not going to be weird about it. She paused. What if she doesn't like Nora? Then that's something they'll have to work through. But I think she will. Nora's trying really hard to do this right. Good. She deserves something good. Out of the mouths of children. Again. The weeks leading up to Emma's visit felt like watching someone prepare for the most important job interview of their life. Nora repainted her apartment, bought new furniture, practiced conversations with Ethan about topics 10-year-olds might care about. She was a mess of nervous energy that would have been funny if it wasn't so clearly rooted in fear of rejection. The day they arrived, Nora met them at the diner. Emma's adoptive parents were exactly as they'd seemed on the video call. Warm, grounded people who clearly loved their daughter and wanted what was best for her. They introduced themselves as Karen and Tom, shook hands with Ethan, and then stepped back to let Emma and Nora have their moment. Emma looked different in person, taller than she'd seemed on screen, more sure of herself. She walked right up to Nora and studied her face like she was memorizing it. You look like the pictures, Emma said. What pictures? Mom found some old ones online from when you worked in Chicago. You had shorter hair. Yeah, that was a long time ago. Emma nodded, still studying her. Do I look like you? A little. You have my eyes, but you look more like your father. The one who died? Yeah. Do you miss him? Every day. Emma seemed satisfied with that answer. She looked around the diner, taking in the booths and the counter, and the kitchen visible through the window. This is yours. Mine and Ethan's. We're partners. Mom says you're really rich. Why would you work at a diner if you're rich? Nora crouched down to Emma's level. Because being rich doesn't mean anything if you're not doing something that matters. This place matters. Why? Because it's proof that people are worth treating right even when they can't pay you back. Even when nobody's watching. Even when it's hard. Emma thought about this. Is that why you wrote to me? Because you thought I was worth it? No. I wrote to you because I needed you to know that giving you up was the hardest thing I ever did. That it wasn't because I didn't love you. And that no matter what happens, you were wanted. Tears were forming in Emma's eyes, and she blinked them back with the determination of a kid who didn't want to cry in front of strangers. Can I hug you? Nora's voice broke. Please. They stood there in the middle of the diner, holding each other while Karen wiped her own eyes and Tom looked away. Ethan felt Maya slip her hand into his and squeeze. That's nice, Maya whispered. Yeah, it is. They spent the day together, Nora showing Emma around Denton Falls, telling her stories about the fight to open the diner, introducing her to the regulars who'd become like family. Emma was quiet at first, but she warmed up as the day went on, asking questions and laughing at Nora's jokes and slowly letting her guard down. Maya attached herself to Emma immediately, dragging her around the diner and showing her the tree in Ethan's backyard that she'd named Gerald. The two of them climbed it together while the adults sat on the porch watching. They look happy, Karen said. They do, Nora agreed. Emma asked if she could come back this summer. Stay for a week, maybe, if that's okay with you. Nora looked at Karen with barely contained hope. Really? She's been asking about you since the first call. I think she needs this. Needs to know where she came from, who you are. We can't give her that. I don't want to confuse her or make her feel torn between families. Tom leaned forward. Nora, Emma's a smart kid. She knows we're her parents, but she also knows you're part of her story. Letting you in doesn't take anything away from us. It just gives her more people who love her. I do love her. I know I don't have the right to, but I do. You have every right, Karen said. You're her mother. Biology, adoption, it doesn't matter. Love is what makes family. And it's pretty clear you love her. Watching Emma and Maya in the tree, laughing about something only they understood, Ethan felt a strange sense of completion. Like all the broken pieces had finally found a way to fit together, even if the picture they made wasn't what anyone had expected. That evening, after Emma's family left, Nora sat in the diner nursing a cup of coffee and staring at nothing. You okay? Ethan asked. I got to hug my daughter today. My actual daughter. Do you know how many times I dreamed about that and convinced myself it would never happen? But it did happen. Because you told me to write the letter. Because Maya asked the right questions. Because I was desperate enough to spend weeks on the street testing whether anyone would treat me like a human being. She looked at him. That's insane, right? The fact that any of this worked? Little bit, but the best things usually are. I don't know how to thank you. You already did, by showing up, by being honest with Emma, by being the kind of partner who actually gives a shit about this place. We make a good team. Yeah, we do. Nora set down her coffee cup. I've been thinking about something. The company my father left me, it's got enough assets to fund 100 projects like this diner. And I keep asking myself what I'm supposed to do with all that power. What'd you come up with? That I want to build more of these. Places where people matter, where someone struggling can walk in and be treated with dignity, where the only thing that counts is showing up and being decent. That's ambitious. It's necessary. There are Denton Falls all over this country, places where the Dale Kramers of the world decide who belongs and who doesn't, places where being poor or homeless or different means you're invisible. She looked around the diner. I want to prove they're wrong. Want to build enough of these places that people start to believe kindness isn't a weakness. You really think one diner at a time can change the world? I think one cup of coffee at a time almost saved my life. So yeah, I think it's worth trying. Ethan felt something shift in his chest. This wasn't just about the diner anymore. It was about taking what they'd learned, that people were worth seeing, that systems were broken, that small acts of decency could ripple outward in ways you couldn't predict, and scaling it up until it couldn't be ignored. Count me in, he said. You sure? It means more fights like this one, more Dale Kramers, more people telling us we're naive or stupid or wasting our time. Yeah, well, I've gotten pretty good at telling people to fuck off, Nora laughed. That you have. They shook on it right there in the empty diner, two people who'd started as strangers and become something closer to family. Partners in the truest sense, not because they needed each other, but because they'd chosen each other. The summer brought changes. Emma visited for a week in July, and Maya appointed herself tour guide / best friend. They were inseparable, climbing Gerald, helping at the diner, staging elaborate games in the backyard that involved intricate rules only they understood. Watching them together, Ethan saw Maya bloom in ways she hadn't before. She'd always been mature for her age, but with Emma around, she got to just be a kid. Nora watched it all with the careful attention of someone who didn't quite trust that good things wouldn't disappear. But as the week went on, she relaxed. Let herself believe that maybe this was real, that maybe Emma wanting to know her wasn't a fluke. On Emma's last night, the four of them sat on Ethan's porch eating ice cream and watching fireflies. Can I come back for Christmas? Emma asked. Nora looked at Karen and Tom, who nodded. If your parents are okay with it, I'd love that. And Maya can come visit us too, right? She's never seen real snow. Maya's eyes lit up. Can I, Dad? We'll figure something out. Emma leaned against Nora's shoulder, comfortable in a way that would have seemed impossible 6 months ago. I'm glad you wrote to me. Me too, sweetheart. Do you think things happen for a reason? It was the same question Maya had asked months earlier. Ethan waited to hear how Nora would answer. I think we make meaning out of what happens to us, Nora said carefully. Bad things happened to me. Losing your father, losing you, ending up on the street. I could have let that destroy me, but instead, I used it to figure out what really mattered, and that led me here. To Dad and Maya? to your dad and Maya, to this diner, to you, eventually. So maybe things don't happen for a reason, but we can find reasons in the things that happen. Emma nodded like that made sense. I'm glad the bad stuff happened then, if it brought you here. That's very wise. I know, Mom says I'm wise beyond my years. Nora kissed the top of her daughter's head, and Ethan saw her blink back tears. Later, after everyone had gone to bed, Ethan sat alone on the porch with the remains of melted ice cream and thought about the path that had brought them all here. He'd moved to Denton Falls wanting to prove that money didn't have to change you, that he could raise Maya around real people living real lives. He'd found that, but he'd also found something else. Proof that the smallest gestures could matter in ways you couldn't predict. That seeing someone, really seeing them, was an act of defiance against a world that wanted to sort people into categories of worthy and unworthy. He'd given Nora coffee. She'd given him purpose. Together they'd built something that mattered. It wasn't perfect. The diner still had slow days and difficult customers. Maya still dealt with jerks at school. Nora still had nights where the weight of her father's company and the years she'd lost with Emma felt crushing. But they showed up anyway, every day, trying to do better than yesterday. By fall, they'd started planning the second location. A diner in a struggling neighborhood 2 hours south. Same concept, same values. Nora found the building, Ethan designed the space, and they hired a manager who understood that the point wasn't just serving food, it was creating a place where people mattered. The Denton Falls Diner had become a fixture in the community. Even the people who'd opposed it initially had come around, grudgingly admitting that maybe it wasn't so bad having a place that welcomed everyone. Officer Ramirez stopped by one morning with his daughter. "Heard you're opening another one," he said. "News travels. You know what you're doing is changing things, right? Not just here, but the whole way people think about what community means." "We're just running a diner." "You're doing a lot more than that. You're proving that treating people right isn't charity or naivety. It's just good business." After he left, Ethan thought about that. Good business. Maybe that was the key, not framing decency as altruism, but as the baseline for how society should function. You didn't get points for treating people like humans. That was just the minimum requirement. Everything else was details. Maya turned 8 that November. They threw her a party at the diner, invited her whole class, including Joey. Nora brought Emma down for the weekend as a surprise, and the look on Maya's face when she walked in was worth every difficult moment of the past year. Joey's mother came too, looking uncomfortable but determined. She pulled Ethan aside while the kids were destroying a piñata. "I owe you an apology," she said. "For what?" "For being part of the problem. For talking shit about you and that homeless woman. For teaching my daughter that being different was something to mock. Joey seems better now. Because you didn't hold grudges. You let her come to this party even after all the crap she put Maya through. That taught her more about decency than anything I ever said." Ethan watched the kids running around, hopped up on sugar and chaos. "Kids learn by watching. We show them how to treat people, and they copy it. Good or bad." "Then I'm glad Maya had you to watch. And I'm sorry she had Joey watching me. It wasn't a grand reconciliation. It was just an acknowledgement that people could do better when they realized the cost of doing worse. Small progress, but progress nonetheless." That night, after everyone had gone home and the diner was quiet, Ethan sat with Nora and Maya eating leftover birthday cake. "Best birthday ever," Maya said through a mouthful of frosting. "Better than the year we went to Disney?" Ethan asked. "Way better. Emma was here," Nora smiled. "She told me to tell you happy birthday again, and that she's already planning your next one." "Is she coming for Christmas?" "That's the plan." Maya grinned, then looked at her father. "Dad?" "Yeah? I'm glad we came here, even though it was hard sometimes." "Me too, kiddo." "Do you think Mom would be proud of us?" The question caught him off guard. They didn't talk about Maya's mother much. She'd left and never looked back, sent money but no calls, existed as a ghost in their lives. "I don't know," Ethan said honestly, "but I'm proud of us." "That's enough." "Yeah, it is." Winter settled over Denton Falls with the quiet certainty of a season that knew its place. The diner stayed busy through the cold months, becoming the kind of place people went not just for food, but for warmth. The coffee was always hot, the conversation always welcome, the doors always open. Nora split her time between Chicago and Denton Falls, managing her father's company while building the infrastructure for more diners. She'd hired people who understood the mission, not maximizing profit, but maximizing impact. It was a harder sell to investors, but she had enough power that their objections didn't matter. Emma came for Christmas like she'd promised, and for 2 weeks the house was chaos and laughter, and the particular joy that came from family that had chosen to be family. Nora rented the apartment above the diner permanently, turning it into a space where Emma could visit whenever she wanted. On Christmas morning, they all gathered at Ethan's house. The tree was slightly crooked, the decorations a mix of expensive and handmade, the presents wrapped in newspaper because someone had forgotten to buy wrapping paper. It was perfect. Emma gave Nora a bracelet she'd made herself, beads spelling out Mom Number 2 in alternating colors. "So you don't forget," Emma said. Nora put it on and didn't take it off for the next 6 months. Maya gave Ethan a drawing of the diner with all of them standing in front, him and Maya and Nora and Emma, stick figures holding hands under a sky full of stars. "For the office," Maya said. "So you remember why we did this?" Ethan hung it on the wall where he'd see it every day. They spent the afternoon at the diner serving free meals to anyone who walked in. It was Nora's idea, Christmas dinner for the community. No questions asked, no payment required. Just food and warmth and the reminder that everyone deserved a place to belong. The crowd was bigger than they'd expected. Families who couldn't afford a big meal. People who had nowhere else to go. The regulars who'd become friends. Even a few faces Ethan didn't recognize. People who'd heard about the free dinner and showed up hoping it was real. It was real. By the time they closed that night, they'd served over 200 people. The kitchen was destroyed, the servers were exhausted, and Ethan's feet hurt so bad he could barely stand. But watching people leave with full stomachs and grateful smiles, he felt something settle in his chest. This was what it was all for. Not the money, or the recognition, or the vindication of being right. Just this, people mattering. Nora found him sitting on the counter, taking off his shoes. "We should do this every year," she said. "Absolutely. And at every new location we open. You trying to bankrupt us? I'm trying to prove a point. Which is that kindness isn't a transaction. It's just what you do when you remember that everyone's fighting battles you can't see." Ethan thought about that. About the battles he'd fought. Grief over his failed marriage. Fear that he was screwing up as a father. Doubt that anything he did mattered. About Nora's battles. Loss and trauma. And 8 years of believing she didn't deserve her daughter's love. About all the people who'd walked through these doors carrying weights they couldn't name. "You think we're making a difference?" he asked. "I think we're trying. That's all anyone can do." Maya and Emma came running out of the kitchen, covered in dishwater and giggling about something. They crashed into each other, nearly fell, and dissolved into more laughter. "Those two are trouble together," Nora said. "Best kind of trouble." "You think they'll stay friends when they're older and life gets complicated?" "I think they'll try. And trying's enough." As the year turned and winter gave way to spring again, the second diner opened to the same kind of resistance and eventual acceptance as the first. Then a third, then a fourth, each one a small act of defiance against the idea that some people mattered more than others. The Denton Falls location remained the flagship, the place where it all started, where a billionaire and a formerly homeless woman had partnered to prove that basic human decency wasn't naive or wasteful, it was necessary. People still talked about the early days, about the fight with Dale Kramer, about Nora sitting in that doorway, about Ethan refusing to back down even when it cost him. The story had taken on a life of its own, growing with each retelling until it was more myth than memory. But Ethan remembered the truth. The cold mornings with 2 cups of coffee, the fear that he was making things worse, the moment he decided that being right mattered more than being comfortable. He remembered, and he carried it forward. On a Tuesday morning in April, 2 years after that first cup of coffee, Ethan walked out of the diner at 6:40 with 2 cups in hand. Nora was waiting in her usual spot, not the doorway anymore, but a bench they'd installed on the sidewalk, a memorial to the woman she'd been and the journey she'd taken. He handed her one of the cups. "Black," he said. "Always is," she replied. They stood there drinking coffee as the sun came up over Denton Falls. And in that moment, everything they'd built and everything they'd lost and everything they still hoped to become felt manageable. Maya came running out, late for school as usual, her backpack bouncing against her shoulders. "Bye, Dad. Bye, Nora." "Have a good day, sweetheart," Nora called. "Love you, kiddo," Ethan added. Maya waved without looking back, already moving on to whatever the day would bring. Ethan watched her go with the pride and terror that came from raising a kid in a world that was both beautiful and broken. "She's going to be okay," Nora said quietly. "Yeah, she is. Better than okay. She's going to be the kind of person who sees people, who shows up, who makes coffee for strangers and doesn't expect anything in return. We could do worse." They finished their coffee in comfortable silence. Two people who'd found each other in the least likely way and built something neither of them could have imagined. The diner opened for the day. Regulars filed in, greeting Ethan and Nora by name. The cook fired up the grill, the servers prepped their stations. The ordinary machinery of a small business doing its work. But underneath it all was something bigger. A promise that everyone who walked through those doors mattered. That their story was worth hearing, their struggles worth acknowledging, their humanity worth protecting. It wasn't a perfect system. It didn't solve poverty or inequality or all the ways the world failed people. But it was something, a small light in a dark room. A reminder that change started with individuals deciding to do better. One cup of coffee at a time. One conversation at a time. One person at a time. Ethan went back inside, tied on his apron, and got to work. There were orders to take, and food to serve, and people to see. The same work he'd do tomorrow, and the day after that, and every day for as long as this mattered. Which, if he had anything to say about it, would be forever. Because in the end, that was the only lesson worth teaching. That people mattered. That showing up counted. That the smallest act of kindness could change everything if you let it. The rest was just details. And as the morning rush started and the diner filled with noise and life and the beautiful chaos of people being people, Ethan looked around at what they'd built and thought about the woman who'd sat in a doorway testing the world to see if anyone would notice her. She'd found someone who did, and that had made all the difference.